fill in
Yeah.
fill in the time and chat while he's working on that.
Okay.
Usually
And it'll
I'll
pop up in the
read it
chat?
out. Yeah, I'll read it out for him as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, who's Anthony Fields? I don't know, but we've got somebody else here.
But you can also read the chat if that's easier too.
That's Xavier's dad, Lindy.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. Let's see. Also, Facebook chat. Would anybody like to monitor that as well, or should I might be multitasking over here.
I think I can do that as
Okay.
well.
Co-host. Okay, let's see. Angela, are you gonna be here? Well, you know what? I'll just give everybody the power that I can think of. If anybody sees somebody who wants to come in, please let them in so that our hosts don't have to multitask too much. Okay. Any
Teaching
questions?
has taught me how to multitask all this.
It's a lot, man. Oh, okay. Oh, and let's see, Heather Felix, Heather DJ,
we've met.
DJ Heather. Yes, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
I just wasn't able to make the sessions last time.
Yeah, no worries.
He
Good to see y'all again.
Good
and
to see you.
you'll recognize Ryan. He's the one who did the gaming thing whenever we did our
Yeah, definitely.
let's do it. Welcome everybody. Anthony, hello. Okay. Live on Facebook. And we'll Felix, DJ, Heather, we will try to keep this to just an hour.
Okay.
Oh, I think I've got a virus, guys. My computer, not me. Okay.
Neither one is good, so.
No, it's not. Okay. Let me see. I'm taking a picture of my screen so I can send it to DJ and Felix. Matt, you might know also. What is this?
Oh, that's just a extension that saves you money essentially.
It won't let me X out of it.
I see an X in the top right corner, sort of like dangling there.
Yep, it won't let me.
It won't let you?
Yeah, this is why I restarted my computer. Can't access.
That's strange. Can you close the window itself at all?
Oh. Let's see, when I try to go live on Facebook. When in doubt, try again. Okay, share to your page, family, friends, and Duchenne. And
All right.
Guys.
Looks like we're live. Let me get that open on my end. Okay, there we go. I see it. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Duchenne Life. With me as Ryan and DJ as our hosts. And today we have Heather Benbrook here. She's a school counselor, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about DMD at school and how to sort of deal with issues associated with that. So Heather, if you have a moment, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Definitely. Well, you know my name now. I am a school counselor transitioning from an elementary school for the past 13 years. And now I'm going to take a new journey into the secondary realm with high school and junior high kiddos as a social emotional learning counselor. Just started that new journey this past week. So that's been pretty exciting. I'm also it's different, but it's going to be great. And then I'm also a licensed professional counselor associate in the state of Texas, and I do private counseling as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we'll ask you a few questions that we have, and also we'll chime in with any experiences we have had before, and possibly some follow-up questions as well. So, just to get us started, we just wanted to ask, what is sort of your experience with Duchenne muscular dystrophy? If you can sort of talk a little bit about that.
So my journey with DMD started, I'm trying to think, it's been 3 years now, with a student that I had at the elementary school that I worked at. And I really hadn't heard of DMD, excuse me, before that. And then about 1.5 years ago, I started working with a child with DMD as well, in the private counseling world. So I've seen it in the school setting and in kind of like that private counseling setting as well, where I've just kind of seen the journey that these boys are going through.
Yeah.
So
Yep, we'll for sure talk about some of the journeys that at least me and DJ have faced, and then also Ryan when he joins us later today. But our first question is sort of what are the common challenges you see when kids return to school with DMD? Anything that we should note, or like things that you've considered before that parents should be aware of?
yeah, definitely in the school setting. Really, I think the biggest challenge is that I've noticed are the mobility challenges in schools. Schools have to be ADA compliant, but also it can still be a challenge for kiddos in the school system, as far as getting around in the classroom, having to have special plans, especially if they're like on a second floor, which at our school we did have a second floor. So that was kind of difficult sometimes for them. We did have elevator access, but I know sometimes my friend at the elementary, like, he felt a little bit different sometimes because he had to have a buddy with him to go in the elevator, and there's some tones of isolation when that happens. The kids were really good about welcoming him and accepting him, but that might not always be the case. And so I think mobility and just kind of social aspects of what we can see and how it affects the kiddos when they're in school, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess before I share my experiences, Ryan is now here. We just basically got started with introducing Heather and talking about some challenges that kids with DMD face at school.
Sorry I'm late. Hopefully I can meet you more later, Heather.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off here. Yeah, I definitely know for as similar types of situations where well, this was mostly when I started junior high that it was second floor. But for sure, like a lot of it could be isolating, especially trying to leave early to get to the next class, those types of things. It could be kind of strange because you're also waiting around all the time when you get to the next class as well, and sometimes that interaction happens in between classes, right? So sometimes yeah, I can see that for sure being a difficult time, just coming from my own experiences too. Ryan, would you like to add anything?
Okay, let me just gather my thoughts here
All right.
real quick. Are we talking about challenges with going to school? Just not sure where we're at on the conversation yet.
Yeah, mostly we're at yeah, just I guess general as well as, but also like starting like when we return to school, since we're getting close to that time.
Well, I will tell you, the start of school is my least favorite time. I love my summer breaks. I like the freedom. And even though it's hot in Arizona, when I was younger, I didn't notice the heat like I do now, younger people. But for me, it was hard. I like my friends at school. Actually, there were a few times at the end of school I cried because I wasn't going to see my friends anymore. I didn't.
Mhm.
I did have friends from church and scouts, but I saw them all the time. So I did look forward to seeing my friends when school started because that's where I did most of socialization and interacting with friends was at school. I will say in the earlier grades, like elementary, school was not very easy for me. I in fourth grade I started using a wheelchair. I had a horrible anger problem. I had detention every day though because my teacher, and I guess everybody there thought I was acting out to get attention, not acting out because I was just frustrated. And honestly, I got too much attention.
Hmm.
So but after I had a few teachers help me with that and it got better. By the time I started high school, we also had like 2 floors and I had to start using an electric wheelchair simply because I couldn't get up, the ramp in my manual wheelchair. And they probably aren't ADA compliant, but at least I can get up to the second floor. But that's my main thing is just looking forward to school. I didn't really worry about the academic parts too much. But as far as social and emotional, I was glad to see my friends.
Mhm.
I didn't think about calling
Like,
them in the summers.
and also just a random tangent. The ADA's anniversary was 2 days ago, so yay that.
Yeah, that's right. And it's actually funny. The reason we had ramps at my school is because of this one annoying guy that threatened to sue everybody all the time. But a lot of people didn't really like him very much, but I'm grateful for that guy. Helped make sure they were there for me. Otherwise, I don't know what high school would have been like. I mean, middle school, my English teacher had to teach, they had to all of a sudden give her a science class because all the science classes for this one second story room. And, I got there and they're like, oh, can we pull you up the stairs in your wheelchair? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Just said, I'm not going up there. So they had to assign my English teacher to become my science teacher. So those were the like, other challenges I had. By then, I was pretty good emotionally.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think yeah, I'm not. I guess I'm not sure where to categorize different topics, but I guess another aspect of that could be associated with. We've talked about this, Ryan, about bullying, and it's kind of hard sometimes with younger kids around, like when you were younger, and sometimes other kids don't quite understand your situation or why you're weaker than everyone else, but that's sometimes a very difficult thing to sort of deal with, and sometimes it feels like you have to kind of pick your battles as well because they are kids and you can't be like too overly punishing of any other children as well. So sometimes it's a difficult set of scenarios.
And actually, I became the bully in fourth grade.
Hmm.
I thought that every kid was going to bully me and they were going to say something because somebody did. So there were a lot of innocent kids, and I just like I would strike out at them before they struck out at me. And I realized later on that I kind of was the bully because I
Mm,
anticipated it so much.
Well, it
I
sounds
started
like you were trying to protect yourself as well. I mean, that's a coping strategy right there that, we naturally sometimes are inclined to do when we feel threatened or feel different, in that social emotional level, sometimes it's
right.
just a natural thing that happens.
Just unfortunately, some nice kids that tried to reach out and be nice to me, and I'd do that, and then tell my teacher I did something. I get my name on the board. And a lot of it does depend on the
mm.
Yeah.
All right, actually, we'll let DJ have a moment here. I think it's going to use his device to say something. Otherwise, you can put in the chat if you need to.
Hey, DJ, we're ready.
For me, returning to school when in elementary school had a little uncertainty, but for the most part, I was usually very excited to get back. At that time, I was still able to do almost everything myself except use the restroom, but my mom worked practically next door. I was also a great student as well, which helped make school fun at this time. Returning to school in junior and senior high was a different story for me. Every year when we came back to school during this time, it was like Groundhog Day over and over with no improvement. The buses would drop everyone off in front and we all stood around looking at each other. I always off to the side having a panic attack because I didn't know how things would go. I believe that was because I had pretty much lost the ability to really do anything for myself at this time, and it was less each new year. I can still remember those days like yesterday because I was plumb scared to death by the uncertainty they held for me. This was usually an all-day feeling for me because I found myself flipping out internally in every period because I wasn't sure if I was going to have a good friend or not with me to help with stuff because the school wasn't gonna help, that was for sure. To be honest, I had that feeling every single day because if my friends were absent, I was really out of luck. I do wish the school would have perhaps offered a little help or at least allowed me to get familiarized prior to school starting and having to figure out in the moment.
I can definitely understand that. There was a lot to that. The first thing I noticed what you said was kind of like the grieving process when you're going back to school, that loss of your summer, but also the fear and the anxiety that comes with having to get back to that routine and not feeling like you have any support in schools. It breaks my heart because I know we try to make it it is a lot different now in schools than it used to be, but still there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that we support our students, especially students with DMD, because it is so isolating. And like you said, that fear and that anxiety, and just feeling alone, and the panic attacks that you were saying that you're having, it causes that distance and that, I'm trying to think of the right word, just feeling like you're abandoned from a place where you should be safe. And so I'm so sorry that you had that experience, but I'm hoping that it has been better as the years have gone by. But there are, over the years too, I think the more awareness that we have and the more knowledge that we have about it, and about DMD, that the better it will get. And I think it's slowly getting there, but there's a lot more work to be done, that's for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
We actually have a comment on Facebook, if you don't mind me asking that one. So he said, have you ever recommended mobility aids or other adaptations to a child that the family disagreed with or weren't comfortable with? So like a wheelchair or using an aid, etc. How did you balance the child's needs with the parents' comfort and wishes?
Yeah. There definitely, a lot of our students the student that I did have with DMD, they did qualify for special education. So we were able to get like OT services, PT services involved as well. And so when you come together in a situation like that, it's really just, it's not one person's decision, it's a committee decision. And so when you come together like that, ultimately everybody has the best interest of the child, hopefully, in mind, and trying to make the right answers for that student. Now, if the parent is completely adamant against it, or the child is adamant against it, what we usually do, now this is a little bit different, but I did have a student who was refusing to use a wheelchair for a Chiari malformation in her brainstem. And so we had it accessible, but we didn't force it. But when she did need it, she would use it. And so having the accessibility there, not forcing it, because then you don't want it to be a rebellion against it either when there is a need. But sometimes we have to provide it, and sometimes it not have to be forced per se, but if it's written in their IEP or their special education paperwork, then we need to at least have it accessible and do our best to provide those supports, even when there is a little bit of resistance, if that makes any sense. I've never really had resistance, so it's kind of hard to answer that, but most of the time they're pretty on board.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, and it's definitely a hard situation on your part as well to try to convince the parents or whoever is in need of convincing, basically.
We can be stubborn sometimes as students or adults.
It's just human nature sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure it can be difficult. Lindy says, Heather, would you say that some of these experiences in school for students with DMD count as trauma?
Definitely. Trauma, when I think about trauma, I think about perceived trauma, and whether it might fit the mold of trauma or not. Any kind of threatening environment, like what DJ was saying, any kind of environment that causes anxiety, that could lead to trauma, especially when it's happening over and over and over. You mentioned bullying earlier. When we classify bullying, it's something that happens consistently and persistent, and that's traumatic. And so
For sure.
sometimes I do think that experiences can lead to trauma in students and with DMD as well. And I think it's all about how it's perceived though. For example, the student that I had, his perception of the reactions of his peers was pretty positive. Although there were some students that just didn't understand, and so they would ask questions. It didn't bother him as much, but if a student didn't perceived it differently and thought it was judgment or them looking down on them, then I can definitely see how it could be a little bit more traumatic. But I think it's all about the perception of how it's received, and different situations can definitely lead to trauma for sure.
Yeah, I think just to share some of my experiences, one time in high school, I actually got mad at this person for asking me because I've just been asked that question about my condition so many times. It's kind of hard to like be calm about it sometimes, but like that could be speaking to what you're talking about in terms of that persistence of those kinds of situations, kind of hard to deal with when those things occur.
Yeah.
Yes, we get a lot of people when you're in a wheelchair with any kind of disability, and you've always got people telling you what's best for you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And even as adults now, I still get that. Yeah. So that does get frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we make decisions that people without disabilities find very strange and don't think we're doing the right thing, right? But I don't know if they necessarily understand what we're going through and why we're choosing certain things. Like one thing I've been asked before is like leaving Texas to when applying for schools and stuff, but that's not the best type of situation for me, and people kind of don't understand why I'm kind of like thinking that way, but that's just one example that I've been told about before.
That's so DJ said I was completely different. I always kept everything inside.
Yeah. And and you can have both of those reactions, because when you think about the brain, I always do this hand brain model, and it's I think it's Dan Siegel, and I teach this to my students too. When we have a higher emotional status and we're getting frustrated, like I heard you say, frustrated and angry and like,
Yeah.
please stop asking me these questions, we're in dysregulation. This is like our prefrontal cortex, this is our thinking brain. And so when we have this emotional reaction, we're in the amygdala in the brainstem part of our brain, and it's a fight or flight. I mean, it's just a natural human response. It's a natural brain response. And so some people, when they're dysregulated, will show it outward and show frustration and anger and yell at people or throw things, or like Ryan was saying, you know, misbehave in class or be the bully and take it out on other people. And that's just, it's a natural reaction. That's the fight response. But then what DJ is saying, he's more the flight response, the pushing it down or the freezing and kind of holding those feelings in. And it's just natural human reaction when we have high frustration or trauma. And then it affects our learning too, especially in schools, because we can't, when we're here, I wiggle my fingers because of when you think about like the neurotransmitters and just the misfires, and we're completely in our emotional brain, then we can't think correctly. We're not ready to learn. And some research says that it takes about 20 minutes to get there. So if you're in this constant flux of stress and frustration, and kids are asking you questions, and you're already feeling stressed and feeling different as it is, your stress level's higher. And so you're not ready to learn. And so then it can cause other problems in school too with learning. So it's just kind of like a trifecta. And so we try to teach kids how to regulate and how to kind of focus on those feelings, naming it and then taming it and figuring out how to cope with those feelings too in school. That can be difficult sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's even hard for a lot of people without Duchenne to handle too sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually read some of these comments since we got a few. Juan says, I used to struggle with suicidal thoughts as a adolescent secretly. Okay, let me see. Matthew says, I will say I hated high school because of people being mean and trying to get a reaction out of me. I was glad to be out of there. And Juan again says, I have a love-hate relationship with high school. People would do me the same, but I made fun of. Oh, okay, so yeah, I think they made fun of him as well, but he would make fun of them back. Oh, sorry. And Matthew says, I got in trouble a lot in school because people would be mean to me, and I would lash out at them and get in trouble.
Yeah. And all of those things are natural reactions to anger. And when we talk about like our emotions, a lot of times, you know, we only see like the typical tip of the iceberg, right? We see the anger, we see the lashing out, but we don't see all the other things underneath. And a lot of times the anger and the frustrations that we're seeing being put outward or inward towards our own self, and the inward's more the anxiety, the outward's more the anger, but ultimately it's rooted in fear, because it's fear of not belonging and not feeling safe in our environment. And it sounds like we all kind of have the same experience with not feeling safe at school and not feeling like you belonged. And those are basic needs, basic human needs. And when you're not getting those met, you're going to have these emotional reactions as well. And it makes it hard, and it makes school hard. I'm so sorry that y'all had these experiences too. And you're right, kids can be mean. It's unfortunately, we see it so much in schools.
There's so much that happens that teachers don't see.
Mm.
You know, I'd go out to the playground in 4th grade, and I'd come back in and my name's on the board because kids would make up stuff, say I did stuff that I didn't do. And the teacher would just believe them and say I'm lying because I had this group of like 10 boys that just thought it was fun to torture me. And So yeah, but you don't feel like there's anybody at school you can turn to or that you can tell. It's just it is lonely, and I even tried to punch myself in the nose to give myself a bloody nose to get out of school a few times in 4th grade. You never quite do it though.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
related to this note, DJ says how do you get teachers to understand more, Heather? And we also had that question in general, how do you deal with difficult teachers who are unwilling to listen basically?
Yeah, it's, I think the more awareness that we've had over the past few years, I mean, I've been in education for going on 14 years now, and it's so different than it was even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I think that really there's been more awareness of mental health in general, the need for support in schools. The current position that I'm taking right now, it was created based on Senate bills and House bills because of the crisis that we're facing. And so I think there is some awareness that is getting better and better and better, but just making teachers aware, training them that like we need to be here and listen to our kids and be aware of the things that are going on. It's hard because I always had, my mom's always said this too, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
And so we can do the best we can to bring about that awareness, but sometimes it is hard. It's hard to get teachers to understand the needs and to really focus on the social emotional needs because they are bombarded with all the
So
standards and
much.
everything else. Yeah. But I think it's getting better. I really do have hope that a lot of the legislation that's being passed for mental health in general is getting better and better. And I think the more awareness we have, the better it'll get. For sure.
And I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
it's just there's a learning curve for us
Mhm.
older guys. Wasn't too many years for that somebody in our situation would probably just be stuck in a a class in the special needs or special education. In my little school district, I was the first person to have a physical disability without any kind of mental disability. So that was just a huge learning curve. And I think there's information so much easier to get now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
But so I'll read Juan and Matthew's comments here.
All right, sounds good.
And okay, well, if you want to, Felix, I guess I'll let you.
No, go ahead. We can alternate. It's all
Because
good.
I do know how to read too. All right. I got that much out of school. The one, and this is very important. What wants got to say, how I would learn to, how I would learn to cope was through writing poetry, rapping, playing violent video games, and listening to music. And Matthew agreed, music got me through a lot. Okay, Felix, I'll let you read the next.
Juan says, I stayed in trouble to the extent where I have been expelled twice, once in elementary and high school.
So what I'm hearing at the beginning part that y'all just talked about is coping skills. Like if we don't have coping skills, it's harder to get through those difficult times. Like Juan mentioned earlier, the suicidal thoughts and the self-harm thoughts as well. That's deep. And those are real situations that sometimes we don't want to talk about, but we have to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, we try to push it down and push it down and push it down, especially with our boys and our men, stereotypically society tells boys and men we're not going to talk about our emotions, we're not going to talk about our feelings, but we have to kind of get over that. We have to push past that and be able to allow them to express that, because when you push it down and push it down and push it down, that's when those suicidal and self-harm thoughts happen. And I want to say it's the second leading cause of death for teenage kids. I'm not sure what that statistic looks like exactly for DMD, but I could imagine that it could be a little bit higher as well, because usually with some type of diagnosis or mood disorders, different things like that, the statistics are typically higher just because it's more difficult. You're faced with different obstacles every single day that you're having to try to hurdle over. And it's difficult. So finding those coping skills, writing, yes, for sure. Like journaling, they say, I've just recently did something called emotional poverty training, and they say that journaling and writing can be just as therapeutic or just as effective as therapy, like going to therapy and going to counseling. If it's done consistently, it can definitely be a good outlet. Poetry, rapping, music, you're engaging different parts of your brain. And so you have to have that release. You have to get those emotions out somehow, for sure.
Those are definitely helpful coping strategies for sure.
Right,
And
it's kind of like a
they'll do it
dam or
different
a
ways. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, a steam pressure valve. You know, it just builds up, builds up, builds up. And if you can't let it off in a good way, or it's gonna explode at some point. And you know, however it comes out, it's not gonna be good.
All right, DJ, actually I'll read because there's a question that I think actually relates to this, and I'll read yours next. But Heather, how would you recommend parents to sort of identify a child's issues when they don't really want to talk about it at home? So if you have any strategies in terms of that.
Sometimes it's harder to say it because we don't always have the words. And especially when we're in our emotional brain, we're not in that cognitive brain, that thinking brain, the words are not always there. So we have to learn how to engage different parts of our brain. Like for younger kids, I mean, realistically, even adolescents and adults can still use these kinds of things, but play therapy, being able to express ourselves through play or art, expressive, creative arts, you know, being able to create the environment where it's risk-free and it's open, not only for parents, but teachers too, having a doodling journal, or a writing journal, just being able to express it in whatever way that individual, that person feels comfortable. And a lot of times it's not with words, and we have to be able to let them do that.
Yeah, for sure. When I was younger, I used to play with my brother a lot with a lot of card games, so that's kind of what got me through that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you want to read DJ's question and then I'll read some of the other comments?
Yes. How would you recommend students advocate for themselves to change the understanding of teachers and other staff?
All right, Matthew agrees with that question, and Juan says, this is from the earlier comment, getting kicked out in high school was a blessing because I was sent to an alternative school where the teachers didn't teach. Long story short, it taught myself how to teach myself academically. It showed me that I wasn't as dumb as school made me feel through SPED.
Special
Sorry,
education.
special education. He says, sorry if
Yes.
my abbreviation offends anyone.
Okay, they've changed the name of special needs, special education quite often. So that's what they called it then.
So that was a lot, Heather, but feel free to respond to any of that.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of merge those together in kind of a different way, but always encourage, like, just giving the kids the voice, because they have to feel empowered when you allow them to be who they are and to be able to express themselves in whatever way that they need to. Then it creates this empowerment, and giving them the voice and the foundation to be able to voice that. For example, the student that I had in school, he was very open to me having a class discussion with his class to explain it. And so what I've done over the years with not just him, but with other students with disabilities as well, is I go into the classroom and I allow them to stand if they feel comfortable. You know, I never want to force anything on this, on any child. But if they want to, give them that leadership, give them that autonomy to be able to express themselves and explain what their disability looks like and why they do certain things. I've had one with Tourette's before that's done the same thing, and he's just, this is the way I am. I might learn different, I might look different, I might walk different, you know, and that's okay. And then I have a whole lesson on like diversity and how we're all different, and we need to make sure that we accept each other for our differences, because I tell them, if we were all robots and we were all the same, we'd be like robots, and the world's not fun that way. And so to accept each other with our differences. And so when you have that, I think the teachers also have the teachers in the room, and so they understand, and so they can be able to, they're able to relay that to their students and be able to kind of nip it if they see that there's concerns in the classroom with those kind of discriminatory comments and questions and stuff like that. And to kind of talk about the alternative schools as well. You know, and we still call it special education and or SPED in schools as well. But you know, SPED, unfortunately, SPED kind of is looked at in a negative connotation a lot because there's not the awareness always. But special education is a spectrum. Like I mean, even if you think of GT services in schools, gifted and talented services, it's still special education. It's just a different part of the spectrum. And so when you're saying like you learned how to teach yourself and you showed them like I'm not dumb. Just because I might be different physically doesn't mean that it affects me mentally. And you know, and there's different parts of the special education spectrum, and just going back to those differences, we're all different. We might learn different, we might look different, but just accept it and love each other no matter what our differences are, because you're different than me and I'm different than you, and we're all different in our own ways. And so just learning how to express diversity and accept our diversity as well, that's really important to understand in schools.
That's really a great idea to have, you know, like a formal presentation in front of the class where there's a teacher, there's you there, because students are gonna ask questions nicely. You know, they'll ask questions differently there than they will on the playground or in the halls.
Exactly. Try to nip it before it gets to that point.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the school year too, usually is when we would do it. So it would kind of try to set the tone for the school year.
I don't I know how I would have felt about that in school, because I was always trying to hide that I had a disability. You know, it's a difficult thing to, it depends on each child, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But like one, I want to add that one said fast forward to college online, I had a 3.6 GPA.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, when I was in
You
high
showed
school,
them.
yeah. And in high school, my GPA is 2.47 or something like that. It wasn't very high. I didn't get a GPA that high till I got a PhD in one.
Yeah, I'm following in Ryan's footsteps with a PhD.
It's amazing.
Just a whole like decade and a half before me. It was just go off. I think Felix is smarter than me.
It's not a competition. Remember, we're all different, and that's
yeah, we're all
okay.
here in
That's
here
right.
together.
Well, it looks like we're getting pretty close. So I think we kind of touched on, you know, that first year, any change is a big thing. Every school year, you know, maybe we can't move like we could the year before. We can't lift things that we could. And we are going to talk about grief. So let's talk about, just real quick with the time we have, about that first year in a wheelchair. That's the biggest, most major
sure.
loss. And like Lindy asked about grief, in a way that losing that ability that you had before, the little bit more autonomy, that is almost like, part of what we had died. So can we talk about grief in that first year in a wheelchair school?
Um, and you're exactly right. You kind of hit the nail on the head with grief. Like typically we think of grief is lost by death, but that's not what grief really is. Grief is any kind of like adjustment or change in your life. And a lot of times it can be kind of merged with trauma, like we talked about earlier. But grief, you're grieving what you once had. And so that transition to a wheelchair, that's difficult because you're grieving your independent mobility. And that, I mean, you can go through the whole grieving process and I mean, just like anything when you've lost something. And so, I mean, grief is real and we deal with grief every day in some capacity and in some way. But when it's a major transition in life like that, it ignites the grief process for sure.
Yeah, I faced that issue when I was more permanently bound. I've used a mobility device before, but happened to me in college when I injured my leg and I pretty much done the job essentially. But yeah, it was difficult to get back to school and trying to get back to some sense of normalcy from before that. But yeah, it's a very difficult thing, and I just wanted to echo that too.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I'll read Matthew's comment here. He said I was doing okay in high school, but I gave up after a teacher and other students were mean to me, so I got out of high school and I just got my GED because I wasn't staying another year. Angela says, Xavier didn't realize he'd one day lose his walking ability. I remember the day he understood, and he isn't going to walk anymore. Yeah, it's a very difficult reality sometimes. Yeah. Well, not
Yeah.
sometimes, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that is a tough realization.
yeah. And it's hard because it's hard to rationalize because you have your wants and you have your desires and then you have your needs. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to balance those, especially when it's a loss like that. Because we all want to be independent. And we want to be able to do things for ourselves. And that's and like when you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like it's one of those basic needs again, like being able to do things for yourself and to feel that that self-construction and self-confidence. And there's all kinds of grief and loss going with that when you have to kind of wrap your head around something so new and so different for you as well.
Yeah.
And Juan said that when dealing with grief in high school, I resorted to marijuana use, which my parents didn't know about until I was 18. And it gets rough that there's
Mm-hmm.
things we could do that we want to do and try to do.
Yeah.
No, that's something that's out there that any experience we have, we're probably not the only ones that have had that thought or that worry or struggle. I know whatever your method is for coping, the hard part is you figure out what you can do as a hobby and what you can do to cope. And then it's hard when you lose that ability. Like I'm always glad that I'd be really in trouble if I smoked or something because I can't even get my hand up to my mouth. So
Mm-hmm.
that is something that's hard too, is But I'm glad your parents found out. Okay,
Mhm.
I don't think we need to read that one. But yeah, smoking, like taking smoke in your lungs isn't good. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
especially with DMD. So I'm glad you quit, Mom. That Matthew got you to quit. What are the comments here you guys can't see?
Yeah.
I know there's a certain point where I've had people ask, well, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, I don't think I have any hobbies. I could say play computer games, but that wasn't really one of the things I like to do. My favorite thing to do is to do like woodworking. They're like, well, I can't do that very well now. Or I like to work in the yard, do manual labor. Those are things that are kind of hard. But I did just get a push lawnmower. So I'm going to figure out a way to tie it to my chair so I can mow my lawn. There's always ways, you just have to keep searching and finding it.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is just having perseverance. I mean, all of you, I mean, with Matthew getting his GED and finding new ways to cope and working around all of the adaptations that you have to do in your daily life. I mean, y'all are the ultimate symbol of perseverance and determination. And I'm just amazed by that. And thank you for sharing those things, because I mean, I'm just thinking of like a theme for this whole thing. And the only word I can think of is just perseverance. Y'all are amazing for all of the things that y'all have done and gone through.
Thank you.
I think that might be one of the hard things we have in one of the struggles we have in school is, I often think my childhood ended at 10 when I started using that wheelchair. We've had to face adult things that other students our age have not experienced at all. I remember so
Mhm.
many girls in high school thought I was super immature because I'd make jokes all the time. And, they didn't understand if I didn't make jokes, I'd go crazy. But just looking back now, there are so many things that, yeah, we've had to learn way early on that probably makes it hard for students to identify with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, people still think I'm too immature to handle things too, but it's just how things are.
But that's also kind of another coping strategy too, is just you have to hold on to the fun, right? I mean, humor is one of the best medicines for for grief and for feeling angry and sad and depressed and all of that. Um and in holding on to that fun part of you and that inner child, like we wish we could all do that. But I think you're also right. It's like it's a little bit rushed. And so sometimes when you have to hold on to it, you just hold on to it and have fun with it.
Yeah, finding the little things, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I saw Angela said that Xavier goes as fast as he can and he screams. Is that with his wheelchair?
Yes, he
Yeah.
is very in the chair and people are always commenting, whoa, look at you. Like all
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
I told say like, wow, you're so good at walking. Like, because it's his life, it's his chair. He's on outdoor fast at all times and he's very good at it.
Uh,
So
he has
and
fun with it.
I told him if somebody made him uncomfortable to just drive away. It's totally fine. Like he wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Like,
always get, oh, do you have a driver's license for that thing?
yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
the
Or
other
Or
day,
speed racer.
yeah, someone said, my feet hurt. Can I have a ride? Or I need one of those. Like, lady, go away.
Or is
Sometimes
get,
it could be a
wow,
little annoying, it sounds like.
yeah, that looks so fun. Is that
Yeah.
fun? I was like,
I wish I could
like-
do that every day. I've heard that
I'm
too.
like, yeah, it's fun if you can get back out of it. After you
Mhm.
get in, you can just jump back out there. Oh,
The realization. Yeah. The awareness, they just didn't have the awareness yet of what that really means in your day-to-day life.
and I'll read what DJ said.
Yeah, go ahead.
He said, it was tough, but I don't believe I would really change anything. Sure, it would have been great if life was a little easier. But, we have definitely learned, we're stronger. And not only that, we can't go back and change it.
Yeah, I found myself actually serving as emotional support for other people without disabilities and telling them like there's a lot of struggles I faced as well, and it kind of helps them sometimes.
Hmm.
And like what Ryan does on the day-to-day basis.
Your
You know,
inner therapist.
So I'm a life coach, but so different.
Yeah.
But one thing I tell people is, I don't think that one of us has anything much harder than anybody else. I say we've all got our challenges and struggles, and we've all got what we can and can't cope and deal with. So I tell
Mhm.
anybody, my challenges are different than yours, but um, you know, I don't want to face your challenges.
Yeah.
I want to validate everybody, let them know that your challenges are hard too. Maybe their
Yeah.
challenges are they don't have any challenges.
Hmm.
So how are they going to learn?
I
Yeah.
think
To be
on that
taught.
positive note, I think we're almost up on time. So, thank you for your time, Heather, and thank you everyone for listening. And we would love to have you back sometime, to continue this conversation, as well as other conversations as well.
Thank y'all so much. I enjoyed it, and it was good to see all of you again.
Brian, you want to add
Yes.
anything? Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, it was good having you here, Heather, to get your outlook on it, not just us saying what we've experienced, what we've felt, to get the other side of it, not just the parent side too. So we really appreciate your view on it or your aspect. I can't think of the word I was going to say. But yeah, we really
Experiences.
enjoy, yeah, your experiences. So thank you, and we're glad there's people like you out there.
Oh, thank you.
If you have any last words you want to share, we could let you do that real quick.
Well, thank you, first of all. And just if you ever need anything, just reach out, and just remember you're never in anything alone. No struggle that you have, you don't have to deal with it alone, and just reach out to someone that and I don't know. Just know that there are people out there that are willing to be there and help and listen and just be supportive and empathetic.
Thank you. And I think with that, and that's advice for any of us. I think we'll just leave with those words of wisdom. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.